UFC Fight Night London, Edwards versus Brady takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. And this one's going to be edited with the pictures because it's just that good of a card. And it's at UK time as well, in the UK. This is a great card. I'm going to start straight away with the early prelim opener of Guram Kutateladze versus Kaue Fernandes. Kaue Fernandes had a bit of a rough start to his career, but a split decision to Mark Jackaze isn't that bad of a debut. Since then, he had a big win in his last fight by finish, which actually surprised me at the time as well, but it was Muhammad Yahya, but he got a really nasty finish in the first round. He's a really good finisher. To be honest with you guys. But, you know, after his debut, I was like, okay, this Yahya fight could be tricky in some moments. But Yahya is not the best fighter in the world at all. He's not the best. So I'm not going to look at it too greatly for Kaue Fernandes, although he did look really good and he did dominate the fight and it was a really nasty finish. I am going to have to lean towards Guram Kutateladze. He's just a better fighter overall. His recent loss to Elves Brenner, it hasn't aged the best, but when you consider that he was just beating up on Elves Brenner for the majority of that fight, and Brenner just sort of outdogged him eventually and hurt him in the third round, and then Guram's whole body just seemed to shut down. There is a bit of a, you know, how many times does Guram have to make it close before you don't just consider every one of his opponents really good, and maybe he's not the best? But I don't see Kaue Fernandes getting an early finish over Guram Kutateladze. That's going to take some doing. If you're going to go out there and smoke Guram Kutateladze in the first round, you got to be something real special. So likelihood is this is going to make it outside the first round. We're going to probably head towards a decision or a late rounds finish for Guram Kutateladze. But I'm going to lean towards Guram. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded as a fighter, a little bit more technical as well. Kaue Fernandes is a decent underdog here because he is a big underdog and he's a nasty finisher. If you look throughout his career, he's got a ton of finishes in the first round, ton of TKOs. I'm going to lean towards Guram Kutateladze though. It is interesting to see that, you know, he did beat Jordan Vucenic. It was a very close fight, but I really highly rate Jordan Vucenic, and maybe we'll get to that in a bit. And Guram did beat him, and he toughed him out, and it was short notice. Full camp Vucenic obviously scores him and destroys him. We get it, but I am going to go with Guram Kutateladze here, beating Fernandes, likely by 29-28 decision. You know, there'll probably be a swing round here or there, but I think Guram's going to win the majority of this fight, 2-1 on rounds. We move on. Nathan Fletcher versus Caolan Loughran. I like this fight for Nathan Fletcher. I like him at bantamweight as well. Of course, on the Ultimate Fighter, I think he was fighting at featherweight because you have to make weight so many times in a row. But I like him at bantamweight. He came up at bantamweight on the regional scene. He had some trouble. You know, his UFC debut was at featherweight, and he was scrambling back and forth with a giant of a man in Zigimantas Ramaska. The guy's name was, and they were scrambling all over the place. He escaped a submission attempt. He ended up getting a submission in round 2 over him. I just think he's really, really good, and I don't think he's going to get bullied around or shucked off at bantamweight. And I think Caolan Loughran, he's a tough dude. You know, he's got a big, giant head. I don't see anyone chinning him anytime soon. So he's going to be in the fight, but I just see him as a little bit of a, and I know I just sort of went back and forth with Marvin Vettori, and I don't want to pile on, but I think he's a bit of a Marvin Vettori of the bantamweight division. He's so stiff, so non-fluid. You know, he's got a giant head, probably a great chin, and he's got some dominant finishes on the regional scene where he's just sort of like bulldozed his opponent and outmuscled them. You ain't going to outmuscle Nathan Fletcher in the grappling exchanges at bantamweight. Like, he's a very, very good grappler. And he's had a ton of finishes in the regional scene where he was just bulldozing opponents himself. So I can see Nathan Fletcher being a little bit more like fluid on the outside if he's going to be there. I think Caolan Loughran's too hittable. I think Fletcher's got better head movement, better defense. Loughran sometimes does do some slick work, but he's just so rigid. He fights like a bionicle. Looks like his head, neck, and back are fused all together, and he just sort of like bobbles around. There's no like fluidity to his game, and I think there is some, at least, to Nathan Fletcher. So I think, listen, they can clash. They're going to both be as strong, and we might end up against a cage quite a bit here, like exchanging over-under positions. But I think in the scrambles, Fletcher's more fluid. He's more talented. He's more dynamic. On the feet, he's got more options. And Loughran just seems very simple to game plan for, whereas Fletcher might be a little bit more difficult in that regard. So, and he's got a little bit of a reach advantage over him as well. And he's a little bit bigger than him. And he's younger. And he's got a better record. I'm going with Nathan Fletcher getting this one done over Caolan Loughran. We move on. Shauna Bannon versus Puja Tomar. This is a tricky one. Puja Tomar's all right. But I was watching back her debut. It was a very, very close fight. Now, Shauna Bannon had a very close fight in her last one against Alice Ardeline as well. And I don't rate either of their wins that they got. Very, very ugly records on the two women that they fought. But you know what I'm actually going to kind of put this down to? And it's sad that it has to come down to this, but Shauna Bannon does have a 6-inch reach advantage over Puja Tomar. She is going to be a little bigger than her as well out there. Puja Tomar is very short for the division, very like stocky for the division, but it does not like that translates into some like level of insane power. Maybe I'll eat my words on that. But I think Shauna Bannon moves forward a lot better with pressure than Puja Tomar. When I watch Puja Tomar's fight, she seems to give up ground quite a bit. I've noticed in her fights. She just sort of gives up ground quite a lot. And, you know, there is 4 losses on her record. She has nearly 500,000 Instagram followers because India, I guess, has just been waiting for an MMA fighter to support. And now Jablee's been fucking Jableed a bunch of times in a row. It's a little interesting. Puja does have some finishes, but over being again 6-8 record on the regional scene, 2-1. No, she lost a bunch of fights at one championship to decent opponents, to be fair. 6-0, Tiffany Teo, Stamp Fairtex. Great fighter, great women's fighter. Would love to have seen her in the UFC. Maybe it's too late for that now, but who knows, actually. It's not too late. I'm pretty sure she's quite young herself, so maybe we will also see that one day, but I'm going to go Shauna Bannon. Puja Tomar gives up too much ground. She backs up so much in her fights. And in close women's 29-28 decisions where neither of them are really landing amazing shots each, it might just go to the pressure of Shauna Bannon. I do want to say that there is a home field advantage here for Puja Tomar. She's going to be like on friendly territory here. It's in London, England, so you know, Puja Tomar's going to have like the home crowd advantage and they're going to be cheering. Like, you know how it is. Wake up. Everyone wake up right now. But Puja Tomar's going to have the home field advantage, so they will be cheering for her. But I think Shauna Bannon's going to have some support there as well. We're not too far from Ireland, where Puja Tomar may also have the home field advantage sometime in the future. Either way, I think Shauna Bannon's pressure might win it for her here. Tomar moves backwards too much. In close women's MMA fights, pressure typically wins. I'm going to go Bannon winning this fight. I can see her holding her up against a cage in moments, failing takedowns, but holding her up against a cage. I'm going to go Shauna Bannon getting this one done. We move on. Christian Leroy Duncan versus Andrey Pulyaev. I think this is Christian Leroy Duncan's fight. Now, Pulyaev is good. I watched his fight on the Contender Series. Nasty body kicks. He's well-trained. He has really good slick moves at middleweight. He's got options. He's a little dynamic himself. I think he's a little bit too manipulatable. And I think Christian Leroy Duncan is a little too powerful for him. I think that's going to be the difference here. A little bit of a snap on the shot difference between the two of them. I think Pulyaev, he's a big dude. He's a rangy dude. I think he's 6'4" at middleweight, 78.5-inch reach. He's built for it. But he seems a little frail in his build, in his frame. He's not dense. Christian Leroy Duncan's got a big head. You know what I mean? He's dense. It's not just like lean muscle mass on him. Like he's actually like bone density-wise a middleweight. Whereas I think in some universe, Pulyaev could make welterweight at 6'4". I think he's a little bit too manipulatable. I think that Christian Leroy Duncan will have him hesitant on the back foot. He does throw good off the back foot, but oftentimes I did see him wincing a lot and backpedaling a ton in the apex. He's going to have a little bit more room here in the big octagon, but that's also going to give Leroy Duncan a lot of room to get off a lot of those dynamic techniques as well. And I think Leroy Duncan's very underrated. He's dumb, and in one of his fights that he had, I believe, against Armen Petrosian, he could have won that, but he kept going for like dumb spinning techniques non-stop, and I was just like, dude, work the jab, push him up against a cage, work the body with knees. Like, you can change the dynamic of this fight, but he was just hell-bent on losing but making it look cool. So there is a worry in my mind that he might just start throwing it away, but he destroyed Claudio Ribeiro. Destroyed him, which is something that we give Roman Kopylov a ton of credit for. Gregory Rodriguez put it on him in moments in that fight by using his grappling. I don't see Pulyaev getting off grappling here against Christian Leroy Duncan. And I think Christian Leroy Duncan looked really good in other fights as well. He looked really good against Denis Tillulin, but it's Tillulin. It's hard to really give him too much credit for that. I think he's a very slick fighter. I think he's pretty underrated. I think he will be a good prospect, and this will be the proven fight for it. He's 29 years old. It's now or never. This is the big moment at UFC London to get the ball rolling. I think he'll win. I reckon I can see Christian Leroy Duncan sort of pressuring Pulyaev backwards. I think he will own the center of the cage here. And I think he'll be able to push him up against the cage, knee him to the body a bunch, knee him to the legs, drag him around a little bit, little elbows up in close. That was something that he showed a lot of in the Denis Tillulin fight. A lot of in-the-pocket elbows and viciousness and meanness. And I think that Pulyev's a little bit too much of a backpedaler and a hesitator. So I'm going to go with Christian Leroy Duncan, pushing him around early. Maybe a couple dangerous moments from Pulyaev where he lands some good shots. And then in round 2, I think Christian Leroy Duncan is probably going to put him away. So I'm going to say, first round, he's got Pulyaev on the back foot, worried, pushing him up against the cage, beating him up there a little bit. And then round 2, Pulyev's going to be a little bit more hesitant on the back foot. And we're going to see some opportunities opened up whenever Pulyaev's back hits the cage. TKO round 2, Christian Leroy Duncan is what I think is going to happen. And I think if he does throw some dynamic techniques, he will have Pulyaev a little bit more hesitant. We move on. Marcin Tybura versus Mick Parkin. I might link my ting, Mick Parkin, 7 a.m. I'm going with Mick Parkin, guys. Mick Parkin's going to get this one done. Slick Mick Parkin. I know Aspinall don't believe in him. I tried to bring him up on the Aspinall interview a long time ago. But, I believe in Mick Parkin. And I believe in him against Marcin Tybura. You want to know why? So many heavyweights, they just don't improve. And there's no slickness to him. And he's slick Mick Parkin at the end of the day. He's had some close ones. But I thought he quite clearly beat Mo Usman. He knocked out Lucas Bursky. These aren't that impressive. But, he's sort of following a bit of a Waldo Cortez Acosta level heavyweight. And he's got good grappling. He's got good instincts in the grappling as well. He can resort to things as a heavyweight. We saw that against Machado, I believe it was, that he ended up fighting at one point. Let me find out if that's the right name of the guy. I think it's Machado. Yeah, Caio Machado. He ended up getting him down a bunch in that fight because he was like, okay, this light heavyweight, basically a light heavyweight fighting a heavyweight, is kicking me a ton on the outside. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to shoot some takedowns. I'm going to mix it up on him. He choked out the guy on the Contender Series. He got stung, but he recovered, got the takedown, scrambled well, got to the rear naked choke position, finished him. It's not something you see at heavyweight. I know Marcin Tybura has beaten a bunch of heavyweight up-and-comers. 39 years of age now. He takes damage every single fight. Jonata Diniz had nothing off of his back for Marcin Tybura and made just the worst mistakes ever. He was rushing for a finish. He needed the KO. And then you look at other fighters that Marcin Tybura has beat. Taito Ivasa rushing a finish, looking for a KO, needs a KO early. Romanov is kind of like a altitude. He threw Tybura around in the first round, but he's a fat, out-of-shape guy. Parkin's got some fat on him, but he's in shape, and he's conditioned well for 3 rounds. Look at the Jamal Pogues fight. I know it's Jamal fucking Pogues, but still, he looked slick, and he kept up good pace for 3 rounds and good popping his shots for 3 rounds. This is a well-conditioned heavyweight that's well-rounded and doesn't look for a first-round finish, which is where everyone loses against Tybura. I don't know what the odds are for this. I haven't really checked the odds. They're evens. Tybura's not a favorite here against Mick Parkin, which is, I think, I thought he would be a slight favorite maybe, just because he's done this so many times where he's beaten these guys that aren't an absolute athletic phenom. But I think Mick Parkin's got it in the bag. I think he's good enough. I think he'll chop up the legs at range. He'll stay patient. He's not going to overthrow and give up dominant position on the ground. He tucks up well. He gets to his knees. He gets back to his feet up against the cage. I've seen him do those things. Whereas other heavyweights like Tuivasa and some of the other guys that Tybura's fraud checked, even Jonata Diniz, Against Austin Lane in the fight before, Jonata Deniz was held on the ground the whole time with like no answer off of his back. So I've actually seen Parkin answer questions that you know, other fighters going into Tybura fights haven't answered, and then we found out that they don't have the answer to those questions. Again, against a Tybura type level heavyweight. So I'm actually going to go with Parkin. Got a little bit of reach, similar size, a bit of weight on him as well. Mick Parkin's 265 at heavyweight, Tybura's 249. And again, the patience, pick apart shots, you know, fight that little technical battle. I don't think he's going to be out there looking for a first round KO. If it happens, he'll find it. But he's not desperate for it. And that's where these guys make mistakes. Greg Hardy did the same thing against Marcin Tybura. The list goes on and on and on of these guys trying to get Tybura out of there and then failing. Parkin, I think, will win like a 29-28 decision against him. That's what I see happening in this fight anyway. We move on. Loughran Kavanaugh versus Felipe dos Santos. Now, this is a strange one because as much as Loughran Kavanaugh has a really high amount of hype on him, and he has looked good so far in his career, and I did think he won his fight against Jose Ochoa, who's all right himself, but I would say that it wasn't the performance I was looking for out of him to continue that understanding of hype from Loughran Kavanaugh. It was a very close fight. He had the bigger moments, and he actually trains with Nathaniel Wood, and he fights a lot like him, who also is on this card as well, by the way. I just think there was this level of hype on him on the regional scene, and there's a ton of hype on him. Like, he's had really good performances, really good finishes. Some of the nastiest combination finishes you'll ever see in the sport. I think it was against Ryan Morgan on the regional scene, where he landed like a step in, 1-2, step out, 1-2, step out, 1-2 again. Like, it was a really nasty sequence of shots that he landed. It went viral, which is what got the UFC's attention, which is why he was signed after going like 5-0 to the Contender Series. But then again, I say those things about him where I wasn't as impressed with his last performance. But Felipe dos Santos goes from, you know, a very, very close fight with Manel Cap, which I highly rate. Manel Cap didn't get the legendary Manel Cap eye pokes off, you know, things along these lines. Victor Altamirano, split decision. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. He won the fight. I thought he won the fight, but it was very close. And Altamirano had good moments of damage. Andre Lima's very good. I'm not going to hold that too much against him, but I'm going to go with Loughran Kavanaugh here. I'm going to go with Loughran Kavanaugh over Felipe dos Santos. I think Loughran Kavanaugh would smoke Victor Altamirano. You know, I think he would dust him up and school him over 3 rounds at this point. So I'm going to go with him winning. He's a little shorter than Felipe dos Santos, but I don't mind that. He's very compact. He beats people to the punch a lot. We saw that on the Contender Series where he put that guy out cold with a nasty shot. So I actually like that he's a little bit more compact for a flyweight. I think Loughran Kavanaugh's going to go out there and get a TKO in the 2nd round or the 3rd round. I don't think early. I think Felipe's going to be a little bit too dynamic early on for a 1st round finish from Loughran Kavanaugh. But I could see a 2nd or 3rd round where he rocks him a few times, maybe drops him on moments in the 1st round, but Felipe's still in there. And then maybe in round 2, he has him up against a cage, hurt, goes to the body, goes to the head, puts him away by TKO. I think Loughran Kavanaugh's a lot crisper on the feet, and I think his grappling instincts are very good. I think Loughran Kavanaugh's going to go far, so I'm going to trust in the evolution of his game. And he ain't had the damage Felipe's had. Felipe's been in some scraps already in his career. Loughran, even though he had a tricky last fight where he did, I believe, get hurt to the body at one point, but he kind of disguised it pretty well. He's still just on an undefeated spree. You know, he's going to keep that momentum going. So I think Loughran Kavanaugh wins 2nd or 3rd round TKO. We move on. Jai Herbert versus Chris Padilla. Now, this is another interesting one. I think I'm going to go with Chris Padilla. I think he's been counted out a little bit too many times by me on my predictions because I've been watching back his fights and I'm starting to wonder how many of these close decisions Jai Herbert's going to keep getting, I'll be honest with you. I know he had the moment where he head kick dropped Ilia Topuria, and that's going to be a moment that constantly gets brought up because we got Ilia talking about moving up to 155, and when he did on short notice to fight Jai Herbert head kick hurt him bad. Very tough fight for Ilia. At lightweight, by the way. 6'1", 77 inches of reach. Insane reach for the lightweight division. And Ilya's a pure striker at the end. He wants to knock you out and get on the inside and scrap. So it was a very tricky opponent for Ilya to take on short notice without full commitment to the lightweight division. He landed a good head kick. He landed some good shots outside of that as well. But then when you look at his extended career at lightweight over the past few years, the Ludovic Klein fight is very impressive of him. You know, I think Ludovic Klein's a very good prospect, but sometimes he's hit and miss. And he had a close fight with Roosevelt Roberts. Although I thought he won and won clear, it was a competitive fight, and you shouldn't be having competitive fights with Roosevelt Roberts. It feels like Ludovic Klein, sometimes he shows up and he's going to be a world champion in the future. And then sometimes he shows up and it's like, maybe we need to see him prove it again before we give him a ranked opponent, because he's on a bit of a spree himself. But I'm looking through Jai Herbert's career. Kyle Nelson's pretty good. That was a very, very close fight that could have gone either way. Very close fight. I gave it to Jai. I thought he was a little busier in the clinch moments that they had. But it was a very, very close fight. You know, Varesiam, I thought beat him quite clearly in their fight. Wasn't the best performance from Jai Herbert. He kind of let the fight get away with him. But it was another competitive decision with not much going on. And Ziam just kind of pulled ahead as it went on. And then you've got Rolando Bedoya. And Jai Herbert ended up beating him. You know, took down Rolando Bedoya in that fight. But again, it was a closer fight. He had good moments. He dropped Rolando Bedoya, hurt him in moments, but he's just not separating himself. And then when I look at Chris Padilla's record recently, I know they're not as recognizable of names, but he's been finishing people consistently. And that's difficult to do in this division. You know, he's beat some guys on the regional scene. Got into the UFC, won a belt at UNF. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. Came into the UFC. Upset James Lontop, who I know, you know, people just know him for the Mauricio Huffy fight. He was actually a pretty touted prospect himself before the moments in the UFC that he had. You know, he went to a split decision with Vyacheslav Borshev, had a scrap with him. I think that's impressive. But Padilla choked him out in round 1. Got him down and choked him out. I think he took him down a bunch in that fight as well, if I'm not mistaken. I thought it was a very impressive performance from Chris Padilla, to be honest with you. I did. He got him down 3 times early in the fight in the first round. He can mix it up. He's very dynamic, and he gets to positions that he wants. Had the submission, rear naked choke in the first round, I believe it was. And then Zhu Rong, a pretty well-trained fighter, pretty good. Someone I could see Jai Herbert going to a competitive 29-28 decision against. Chris Padilla goes out there, outstrikes him barely, looks pretty dynamic. Of course, he did lose his early fight in the UFC to Giga Chikadze, I believe. Was that the loss that he had? I'm thinking of a completely different person. Sorry, I take it all back. I completely take it back. I literally just glanced at it there and I thought, oh, is this the guy this? Never mind. But Chris Padilla, I know who it was as well. Never mind. He looks very similar to him. Either way. Zhu Rong, I think he put him away with a nasty elbow on the counter. Badly messed up his eye in that fight. Put him away. I like Chris Padilla here. I like the finishing potential. Jai Herbert's 36 years old. I think Padilla's pretty underrated. Yeah, I think he's a good underdog here. Is he a slight underdog here? He is. I'm going to take a slight underdog of Chris Padilla, to be honest with you. I think he's better at getting to dominant position. We don't see Jai Herbert dominate positions. He's good at range. He'll catch you now and then. He picks shots. He floats around. Chris Padilla gets you down. He gets you back. He lands a big shot, puts you away. You know? I think Chris Padilla is underrated. And I think he's probably going to go out there and beat Jai Herbert, to be honest with you. How many more times is Herbert going to get these close decisions? You know, I know it's in the UK as well, so there is going to be a bit of that sway, but I think eventually his numbers coming up. It's not someone who I just see having longevity in his career, you know. Eventually that sort of stops, and Padilla's on a finishing streak in his own career, so I'm going to go with Chris Padilla getting this one done. We move on. Nathaniel Wood versus Morgan Charriere. You guys know I'm a big fan of Nathaniel Wood. Have been for a very long time. I was hyping him up on the regional scene. He had a crazy brawl on Cage Warriors. A ton of great finishes on Cage Warriors as well. Came up at bantamweight. Was on a spree. Looking amazing. Looking sensational. About to beat John Dodson. Got cracked. A little bit of an early stoppage, but it is what it is. Apparently he was cutting too much weight. That's what he was claiming. He's now moved up to featherweight. He's had a bit of a on and off career at featherweight, but it really comes down to this with this matchup against Morgan Charriere. I think Charriere is going to hurt him at some point. And I don't know how many more times Nathaniel Wood is going to survive being really badly hurt in fights. He's had good recovery, but he seems to constantly find himself in bad... I think Morgan Charriere would dust up Daniel Pineda in a fight. Wood beat him, and he beat him clear. But he had a moment where he got hurt. He had a moment where Pineda ended up on top, smashing him with elbows. There's just a lot of fumbling moments from Nathaniel Wood where he continues to fumble getting a finish, or he ends up, just falling on bottom position and not making the right move in certain moments. He tries to do things too perfect, and sometimes you have to be panicky in a way. You have to be urgent to get out of certain positions. He gets too into a flow state, he starts feeling himself a little bit, and then boom, he gets cracked, and he's wobbled by Andrey Fili in a very close fight that people were screaming about Fili getting robbed in. I don't think he got robbed. I thought Nathaniel Wood very clearly won that fight, but it was a very close and competitive fight where he got hurt early and put down and had to recover and hurt Fili back, and round 3 was pretty close, but I thought Wood edged round 3 pretty clear, and people were just taking into consideration other moments in the fight, and everyone likes Andrey Fili as well. I thought Nathaniel Wood won that fight very clear, but again, I think Charriere TKOs Andrey Fili in round 1. Naimov cheated a bunch. Wood should have beaten him. But Naimov got dusted by... I thought he got dusted by Lima, wasn't it? Felipe Lima dusted him, put him away, had a good performance against him. He just beat Karnoff Lee, but I don't rate Karnoff Lee at all. I'm going to go against Nathaniel Wood. I think he's going to be winning this fight and looking the better fighter. But I think eventually there's only so many times I can trust you to recover from getting really badly hurt before I think that you're susceptible to getting really badly hurt. And if you get hurt against Morgan Charriere, he's got those nasty finishing instincts where he'll hurt you and then boot the shit out of your body on the ground. Khalil Roundtree style. You saw that in his fight against Gabriel Miranda, I believe it was, which was a little bit of a layup for him. Another matchup I want to talk about with Morgan Charriere that I thought was a very underrated performance. Wood got robbed by Kenny as well back in the day. It's all good. One I thought was a very underrated performance from Morgan Charriere. Shep Mariscal. He arguably could have won. And I think Shep Mariscal is one of the more underrated fighters on the roster right now because he's putting together a hell of a resume. I'm going to go through it right now. Charriere, he's coming off a big TKO win over Gabriel Miranda. He's had time off. He's got a ton of momentum behind him. He's got a big profile as well. He's a big name. There's probably going to be people cheering for Wood. They're in London, but I reckon there's going to be a lot of French fans coming over to cheer on Morgan Charriere. He has got a massive fan base. He's been in a bunch of rappers' music videos from ages ago as their French prospect before Cyril Gane come along. He was their regional star. But he had a very close fight with Shep Mariscal. I thought Shep edged it maybe, but Charriere, it was very close. He landed better shots, and Shep was often failing takedowns a lot on him. But Shep's put together a hell of a resume recently. I'm just going to go through Shep's resume right now, and very clearly dominated and beat Ricardo Ramos, dominated Damon Jackson and beat up on him, beat Jack Jenkins. I know it was a bit of a weird moment, but still, I think he's put together a really good streak, and I think he's worthy of a ranked opponent himself. I don't mind that performance from Morgan Charriere to be his only loss in the UFC. So I'm going to go with Morgan Charriere getting this one done. He's got 10 losses, but they're to people like Paul Hughes in a very close competitive fight. I know it's not the Paul Hughes that we now know that seems to have come into his own at lightweight, but it was still a very competitive fight with Paul Hughes. Very competitive fight. Then Vucenic he fought on the regional scene as well. He lost, but very, very competitive fight and arguably could have won. Very, very close. I thought Vucenic was doing a good job of damaging him off the back. Not off the back, but with his back to the cage. He was working a lot in the clinch with punches while Charriere was kind of just trying to hold him. But he's got good wrestling instincts. He's got very underrated strength in his hips. So I reckon Wood will be winning on the outside on the feet and then disaster will strike. And I think Wood will lose by TKO in the second or third round. We move on. Up the card, Jordan Vucenic versus Chris Duncan. I'm going with Jordan Vucenic. Chris Duncan, I've actually messaged Chris Duncan. He seemed pretty cool dude. Cool story. And I think he's over-delivered a lot in his career. On the Contender Series, of all the people to go through the Contender Series, I think he lost his first time around on the Contender Series, and then they brought him back. And he kind of was getting dusted up by Charlie Campbell, wasn't he? And Charlie Campbell was like putting some mustard on him in that fight. And then he like cracked Charlie Campbell back and ruined his big finish to get into the UFC. I'm going to double check that information right now if I've got it correct. But I'm fairly certain that was the story of that. Yeah, it was. He beat Charlie Campbell. Lost to Pulyaev on the Contender Series, but he had a terrible weight cut. I remember seeing the pictures of that. But he still got beaten by Pulyaev. Charlie Campbell was beating up on him, dropping him all over the place, and then he cracked him back with like a massive comeback TKO win. He also got put away by Manuel Torres early in the fight by rear naked choke, who just sort of went at him and just overpowered him and eventually like fell into a rear naked choke position. But Duncan has put together some like sneaky good wins, I didn't think he was going to beat Blachowicz, but he pulled off a guillotine win. It looked like Blachowicz was going to be doing his thing, way faster on the feet, landing the better shots. Duncan didn't really have much for him early in that fight. Caught the guillotine on him after he shot a takedown, put him out with the guillotine. I just think Vucenic's a better technical fighter, and he doesn't get his head stuck in guillotines, and he doesn't get chinned. This is the thing about Jordan Vucenic. He's been in trouble before in his career, but he's in the fight all the time, and he's switched on all the time. He's very composed out there. That's something you got to look for in fighters, the composure. They're very locked in. Once there's no getting lackadaisical, you know what I mean? Where they just sort of lose focus for a moment. I think Vucenic's a lot faster than him. That's something that's going to be very, very noticeable. I like Vucenic knowing that he's at lightweight. He fought once on the lightweight scene, at lightweight on the regional scene. Moved up, got a finish by guillotine there. And then he, of course, fought Guram on short notice. And he looked good. I even think, I know that Guram had his back at the end of the second and was landing some punches. He was winning, the first 3 minutes of the second round. It's actually a quite debatable decision. And he looked amazing in the first round against Guram. Whereas I think Duncan would come up short, quite heavily short against Guram Kutateladze. So I think there's a reason for Vucenic being a 4-1, 3-1 favorite here. He's way faster. He's a lot more technical. He's got reach to work with at lightweight as a former featherweight. I think this is going to be a big coming out party for Vucenic. So I'm going to say that he wins this fight by decision, 30-27, schooling Chris Duncan over the distance of the fight, with Duncan sort of trying and failing to hold him up against the cage in moments. I just think he's a little bit too slow, in my honest opinion. I'm going with Vucenic. Speed wins. We move on. Molly McCann versus Alexia Thainara. I'm going to go with Alexia Thainara here over Molly McCann. I think she's a dude. I mean, this butch, everything you're looking for. Good women's MMA fighter, hatred of the world, ugly. You know what I mean? It's there's a lot to it. Punches like a man. Swear to God, big power shots. I was watching her Contender Series fight back. Of course, you don't know much about the opponent that she took on, and it's hard to tell the quality of the opponents. But she's got 5 inches of reach. She's going to be a little bigger. You're going to see a massive muscle difference between the two of them. I think she looked great in terms of her offensive takedowns on the Contender Series. When she wanted the takedown, she just straight up got it. They were in the clinch and she was throwing the girl over on the Contender Series. It looked like she didn't really want to stay on top because maybe she considered that her opponent, who I believe was a Brazilian women's fighter, I think she believed, her one chance is to catch me in a submission off of her back. So she kind of sort of went away from that and stayed beating her up on the feet. But she's got some vicious instincts. I remember her separating after getting a takedown, waiting for the girl to get back up and throwing a Trevor Peak hammer fist at her as she got back up to her feet. Big power shots, powerful woman. Good in the clinch, strong. I reckon she will be able to hold down Molly McCann if she wants to. She's got 5 inches of reach to work with. I think she's more powerful on the feet. I don't know if Molly McCann's got the technical fundamentals for women's strawweight. That's what I'm thinking here. She's not as outsized as she is at women's flyweight as she has been earlier in her career. And she does have some nasty finishes earlier with the spinning elbow over Luana Carolina. Molly McCann does have some highlights. I just think 11-1 Alexia Thainara is going to be a little bit too much for her here. Too much physicality. I could see her just getting held down, beaten up on the ground. I'm going to see a TKO win for Alexia Thainara. And also if Molly McCann, the veneers, you know what I'm saying? The look changes, the TV show that she's on. She's got her own cafe, or a calf, sorry. I'm turning American over here. Alexia Thainara is going to be hungrier. So I'm going to go with her getting this one done. TKO over Molly McCann is what I think is going to happen here, to be honest with you. We move on. Gunnar Nelson versus Kevin Holland. Nelson's going to get hit by that 45-70 as well. No, I don't know what's going to happen here. It's a tricky one to predict, to be honest with you. Let me have a look at these odds, because I think Gunnar's going to win. And he is a slight favourite. I do agree with the odds. A slight favourite for Gunnar Nelson. Of course, Holland is dynamic, and he has abilities, and he's very athletically gifted. At what point do we have to start taking him at his word that he don't care? Because this move is just back down to welterweight, short notice, going to London. Not too short of notice. He's still going to have a bit of training camp here, but there just doesn't seem to be any plan to his career. It just seems to be show up, and if you win, you win. If you don't, you don't. Goofy. I'd rather never know if I would. I'd rather never know for sure if I wasn't good enough than know for sure that I wasn't good enough. This is the storyline of Kevin Holland's career. We've been over this before so many times. I've been screaming this for the past few years about Kevin Holland, but he's got a 9-inch reach advantage over Gunnar Nelson here. He's going to be a lot taller as well, but Gunnar's very dense for the division. Gunnar has very effective takedown entries. I'm going to have to imagine Gunnar Nelson gets a takedown and gets a rear naked choke over Kevin Holland, to be honest with you. I think he will just have a jiu-jitsu difference. He will have taken this seriously. He shows up once a year and typically has a pretty good performance. I think he's on a win streak right now, in all honesty. And I think he's coming off of a rear naked choke win in the first round in his last fight that he had. If it will load. I mean, he hasn't fought in a while. And he just immediately choked out Brian Barberena in their fight that they had, which isn't even too much to really talk about. Dominated Takashi Sato. Didn't get the finish, though. That was the year before, and then a few years before that. When Gunnar Nelson shows up, I know he's healthy. You know what I mean? Because there's no reason for him to be this inactive otherwise. So you could say neither of these guys are taking their career too seriously. But I think Gunnar knows the drill here. Go out there, stay patient, get the takedown, get to Holland's hips, and then get himself to the back of Holland, drag him down, tie him up against the cage. You know, get the body lock on him and start doing what he does with the back taking system, and then eventually work it into a rear naked choke. So I'm going to say another first round submission. Kevin Holland loss. Gunnar Nelson will get a rear naked choke in the first round. There's a part of me that does see Holland hitting him with that 45-70 and catching him in the first round by TKO. But when you look back through Kevin Holland's career, I always imagine that he has a really high chance of catching people on the feet in the first round. For some reason, whenever I pick a Kevin Holland fight, I think, well, the other guy's going to win. But man, Holland could catch him early. Oh, you never know with Holland. He could always catch you early in the fight. But then I go back through his career, and let's start at like 2021. He didn't catch Derek Brunson, who's extremely sloppy on the feet. Marvin Vettori, of course, is unfinishable at this point. Tim Means was giving him problems before he beat him. He got takedowns on him. Tim Means, this is what I'm talking about here at welterweight. Tim Means got takedowns on him. I know JDM made him look good in that fight because he just stayed on the feet the whole time, and Holland's got a chin of steel and you're not going to knock him out. So it's going to be a striking match. But where was the pop and the power in the JDM fight? You know, Tim Means eventually got a takedown and got put into a submission. And he got, I believe, Dash choked in that fight, or Anaconda choked. Something like that. He put away Alex Oliveira, but Oliveira had him down and had his back and nearly had a rear naked choke, but the arm was still in it, so it wasn't quite a full-on rear naked choke. But you know what I'm saying? That people get to these positions on him. Tim Means got to a back take and drag on him. Alex Oliveira, older Alex Oliveira, got him down. And didn't Gunnar Nelson beat the shit out of Alex Oliveira? Took him down and elbowed the hell out of him on the ground, if I'm not mistaken. So eventually Holland caught Alex Oliveira, put him away. Chimaev goes out there and just absolutely wrangles him up and finishes him. Wonderboy beat the hell out of him. But he had a weird deal to not shoot a takedown. You know how Holland is. Then I think, Ponzinibbio. I know he beat Gunnar Nelson after eye gouging him twice in the first round. But Ponzinibbio is an older fighter who's quite slow and susceptible and, in my opinion, quite chinny. Seems to be one of his problems. And he was kind of chewing up Holland's leg on the outside in this fight at welterweight. Eventually, Holland caught him in round 3, but the first 2 rounds were very competitive rounds. Michael Chiesa gets him down, gets the back, submits him at welterweight. I don't know if Chiesa's that much higher level than Gunnar Nelson. I don't know if he is. I know he's stronger and bigger than Gunnar Nelson, but I think Nelson's got just as similar. I think if they had a jiu-jitsu competition, I could see Gunnar winning it in a jiu-jitsu grappling match if they were to fight on Fight Pass in some submission underground type thing. The JDM fight's JDM fight. He lost. He got hit with all the better shots. And, he's unfinishable. So it's going to become like a striking fight. But anyone who grapples, let me know when he got a first round finish or he caught someone. Mikhail Alekseychuk put him down and he ended up submitting him off of his back. Good job. Mikhail didn't tap. He actually didn't even break his arm, ref. But you just stepped in anyway. It's all good. MVP schooled him on the feet. Holland eventually was panic shooting takedowns. He got a moment in round 2 on MVP with a takedown. But he was getting schooled on the feet there. Roman Dolidze. Where was him stinging Roman Dolidze? He was doing good on the feet on the outside, but everything seems hesitant. Everything seems, get away when he's fighting a grappler. No, don't shoot a takedown on me. I haven't even worked this training camp because I can't be asked. Derrida gets him down. Straight away, subs him. I'm going to go Gunnar Nelson. Getting him down. Little bit of danger early on. But Holland ain't finished no one early in a very long time. So I'm going to say Gunnar gets him down and subs him. Is what I think is going to happen. Gunnar Nelson. Submission win. Round 1. We move on. Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg. Have you guys been watching Calm Pereira's YouTube channel? I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to Calm Pereira on YouTube, but I've been swayed completely on my prediction. Calm Pereira is the name of the channel, and he posts highlights of fights on YouTube and breaks down moments. And over the past 4 days, he has ran a Jan Blachowicz propaganda campaign. That's all I can say about it. Blachowicz ends Corey Anderson's UFC career. Jan also ends Luke Rockhold's light heavyweight career. Jan painfully ends it. Reyes' prime goes down the drain. Our hero Blachowicz, this is the type of propaganda we're talking about here. Our hero Blachowicz ends Izzy's 20-fight win streak. He did, and he outstruck him. Our GOAT, Jan Blachowicz, puts an end to Rakic's title shot hopes. And he did. And he did great against Ankalaev and destroyed his legs in that fight. And Ulberg looked mid against Ozdemir. He won. I thought he won the fight, but I thought it was very close. A lot of people didn't think it was very close, but if you watch back the fight, which I did, it was very, very close. Ozdemir with the first round, Ulberg with the last 2. And Ozdemir was finding a home for kicks to the legs. You know who else was? Da Un Jung was finding a home for some kicks to the legs. Ulberg eventually finished him in the 3rd round. But those first 2, although Ulberg was outboxing him, am I going to go with Jan Blachowicz after all the surgeries I heard him talk about on Believe You Me? Because that's the only reason that I would have picked against him. I would have said, I think Jan Blachowicz is better. In his prime, Ulberg doesn't stand a chance. But Blachowicz is 42, and Blachowicz is, he's had all these surgeries, and he's been out for a while. I'm kind of done using just that to dictate who wins a fight, especially at these heavier divisions. If it was like, Cruz is coming back after 2.5 years and he's had all these surgeries again, a little bit of a different story. He's going to look mid against Casey Kenny, but he wins, you know what I mean? But either way, this ain't Dominic Cruz, Marlon Vera, This is Jan Blachowicz we're talking about. One of the best strikers in UFC light heavyweight history. He's really good. And I just don't see how Ulberg's going to jump the gap of barely getting by Ozdemir and scraping by against Dauten Jung in moments and eventually getting a submission in the third round based on a poor judgment call by Dauten Jung, to all of a sudden just TKOing Jan Blachowicz. I don't see it. I don't see Ulberg TK. This ain't Nikolai Negumereanu, you know? This ain't Alonzo Menifield charging him like a tard. I would have loved to have seen how Ulberg looked against Anthony Smith. I think he would have won the fight, but this ain't Ihor Peteria. Like, this is a real savvy guy who ain't going to leave his chin open coming in. It happened once against Thiago Santos, and it ain't happened since. If you ain't got an ability to take him down and make him really fear a takedown, you're going to be technically striking with Jan Blachowicz. And I saw Dauten Jung getting a home for those low kicks. And I saw Ozdemir finding him as well. And Ozdemir landing on you as well. And I think Blachowicz is just a better Ozdemir with more power in his hands, with better kicks, better distance management, better striking defense, more athletic, stronger. Can mix in a takedown of his own a bit more likely than Ozdemir can. I mean, there's options. 3-rounder. This ain't 5 for Jan. I like that it isn't 5 for Jan. We're at sea level. London is sea level. This ain't altitude against Alex Pereira, who Jan arguably beat. I rewatched it again. I think Jan won that. I stand by that. I know I got proven wrong by the Weasel's system of describing which strikes mean more. I swear, I think Jan Blachowicz could have been given that fight. He dominated the first round, obviously, with the rear naked choke. He was on the back of Alex Pereira the entire time. Round 2, I go Pereira. But here's the thing. Before the last 30 seconds of round 2, where Jan was puffing and breathing heavy and Pereira started to change the tide a little bit and tee off against the cage, he was landing really good, solid shots on Alex Pereira and outstriking him early in round 2. The end of round 2 and the visual end of round 2 made it Pereira's round. But before that, Jan was blitzing in and just catching Pereira on the chin a bunch. Should have been seen as a bit of a red flag going into the Ankalaev fight. Either way, it was at altitude. He's older. You know what I mean? Not the best time to take a fight at altitude. Smart from the UFC. Round 3, I swear he landed the better punches. Pereira was jabbing the body a lot and maybe went... I thought Jan Blachowicz was doing a good job dealing with his low kicks. Like, I know Ankalaev just sort of endured the low kicks of Pereira off the lead leg because Pereira couldn't really sit down on any really big ones against Ankalaev because of the pressure. But Blachowicz went tit for tat with the low kicks. His low kicks affected Ankalaev a lot more. Ankalaev ain't putting you away early. Pereira ain't putting you away on the feet. No one is. Adesanya's getting out technically struck by you. I'm going to go Jan Blachowicz getting this one done. And you know what's a fucking disgrace about this? And this is how you know they're only taking into consideration the age of Blachowicz and the injuries. Here's the thing, though. On Believe You Me, he said, I got a shoulder surgery, another shoulder surgery, a surgery in my leg. And I start hearing the numbers of, I think he listed about 4 surgeries that he had. He was supposed to come back a little bit sooner last year, wasn't he? But he pulled out again to have another surgery. I kind of think to myself, either Jan Blachowicz is just cooked and he's going to look terrible and Ulberg wins and it's just like, oh, that's sad. Yeah, Jan's done and this is his retirement. Or he's been waiting on a lot of those surgeries. And when you get one and you know you're going to be out, you start getting all of it done. You know? That's what I'm maybe considering this as. Sometimes some time off when he was so active and he was on his championship run and he had to be active and he didn't want to miss out any opportunity and he was waiting to see if Jones would fight him and he got the opportunity against Reyes and then it's title fight time and he's against Glover. Now it's time to earn it back. And in this matchup, an Ankalaev interim belt, there's all of this. Keep Blachowicz around. It doesn't matter. He can't afford time off. Sometimes you take a little step back for a year and a half. You get a lot of like ongoing problems fixed that you've had in your game or in your body for a long time. Like he's probably had a shoulder annoying him for a while at his age. Another one annoying him. You know, he's probably had a bit of a hitch in his step for quite some time. But still, I think he'll beat Carlos Ulberg. I haven't seen enough from Carlos Ulberg. There's moments of brilliance and he does look good. I just think Jan Blachowicz is going to win and we're going to see Yuri Prohaska versus Jan Blachowicz moving forward for a title shot against Magomed Ankalaev after the rematch with Alex Pereira. Which, who knows who's going to win, but I'll probably lean towards Ankalaev in that rematch. That's the future of the light heavyweight division that I see. 3-rounder helps as well. I'm going with Jan, and again, the disrespect of this. The level of disrespect, brother. Jan is... Ulberg's a 3-1 favorite. I'd be just a terrible advice giver to not put something on that. I'm not going to bet on it, but... Come on. Jan, nearly a 3-1 underdog against Carlos Ulberg. Jan fucking Blachowicz, people. Who do they think Ulberg is? I might look stupid if I'm wrong, but I'm supporting Jan Blachowicz here, dude. He's really, really underrated and really good. And I'm done counting him out. So I'm going to take him to beat Carlos Ulberg. Dude has 13 pro fights. Jan Blachowicz has 40. And Ulberg, a young up-and-comer, he's 34. And he's got a reach disadvantage while being taller. Jan loves that shit. We move on to the main event. Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. This is enough. Why is Leon Edwards an underdog here? I know Brady looked good against Gilbert Burns. He looked really good against Gilbert Burns. I think Burns might be done. The JDM loss was vicious. He took elbow upon elbow upon elbow over and over and over again in that fight. I was worried for Gilbert Burns during that finishing sequence. He ended up losing to Sean Brady, got quite dominated. There were some moments of success that he had, but Brady was just pushing forward against him and taking him down and getting positioned to where he didn't really need to be stuck in any jiu-jitsu positions and could hold the body lock and drag him down from there and pick him up and dunk him and stay safe in full guard. And that's always something that Brady's had a very good job of. He's the best at like negating people's jiu-jitsu off of bottom position. Sean Brady actually has a win over Craig Jones in a jiu-jitsu grappling match. Very impressive. Where he basically just took him down and laid in full guard and refused to give Craig Jones anything. Kind of cheap, to be honest with you, but he's good at he will not get subbed, you know? But I think Leon Edwards, look at the differences in performances against Belal Muhammad, for example. Leon Edwards lost to Belal Muhammad 3-2 on rounds. I don't remember what individual round in between it was. It might have been round 2 and 5 that Leon Edwards won. I know he won round 5. At the end of round 5, couple more elbows, Belal's out cold. Like he was genuinely getting busted up by Edwards towards the end of round 5 with those elbows. But Edwards tries to make it look too delicate and too pretty, and he didn't let go when he needed to in certain positions like a JDM would, in my opinion. But I think he's underrated. I don't see Brady getting his back. This is what I don't see from Sean Brady. I could see him working wrestling on Leon Edwards. But I don't see him getting dominant jiu-jitsu position over Leon Edwards the way Belal Muhammad was able to. And Edwards is an underdog. Edwards is an underdog. And when you really look through Brady's career, I know it's a what have you done for me lately type sport. And, you know, recently he has looked really good. And the Gilbert Burns performance is like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. He's still in it. When you go back to 2021 onwards in his career, dude fucking barely beat Michael Chiesa. Just keeping it real. Beat Jake Matthews, 2 competitive rounds. I'm not even going to look that far back, but we'll move on from there. Got TKO'd by Belal Muhammad. Failed every takedown on him. Really terrible entries on takedowns. TKO'd, completely crumbled upon getting cracked by a good shot. Burns never really cracked him like that in their fight. Kelvin Gastelum, he ends up absolutely dominating. Gastelum's just a fat fuck. Let's just call it what it is. Then the Gilbert Burns fight. You've got to also consider that this isn't full camp for Sean Brady. This is a short notice step up for Sean Brady. He's a favourite in. Am I going to double up on underdogs again? I did this last weekend with Roman Dolidze and what's his name in the co-main event, Chidi Njokuani. And it ended up, I was worried because the whole card was upsets. And I was like, oh my God, the logical underdogs ain't going to win because all these dumb ones are winning. But I think this will be different. I think there'll be a lot of favourite wins on the card. And I think it will end the same. I think there'll be double up on underdog wins in the main and co-main event. I'm going to go Leon Edwards here. I think he's a better striker than Sean Brady. And I don't see him getting dominated in the grappling. He knows what to do. He knows how to work his back on the cage. and fight 2-on-1, separate himself from those positions. Sometimes he gets tied up in those positions. But Brady hardly like dominates with ground and pound. And Leon hits really good reversals. And if you do get dominant position over him, he often gets really good butterfly guard, feet to hips. He'll hit a reversal if you do try and take his back, because his hips are so narrow that he can slide out of positions when you try and put hooks in on him. He'll just flip out, get 2-on-1 and sort of turn it around. He did that to Belal twice in their fight that they had. And I think Belal's a better Sean Brady. And it was 48-47. And it was... it's fucking 5 a.m. It was 5 a.m. And that's crazy. I'm done acting like that ain't crazy for Leon Edwards to deal with. That was an embarrassment to UK MMA that the UFC did that. The champ? 5 a.m. his time? That's insane. Belal gets to fly over. No time change from America. Just waltzes in. Leon's got a time every day being up until 5, 6 a.m. You're acting like he's a European MMA fan. You know? He's a fighter. I bet you he was waking up at 5, 4 a.m. getting a workout in and then trying to sleep at 7 a.m. with the birds chirping. Sorry, I'm having PTSD because this is the life that I fucking live. I literally hear birds chirping right now. I hope that you can hear this shit. Leon Edwards is going to win, I think. While they're at distance, he will control the distance. I don't see Brady having the ability to catch him with something you don't see coming. That's what you got to do with Edwards, right? You got to catch him with something like Belal caught him with that uppercut. I don't see that here. I don't think Brady's got that level of educated pressure behind a jab. He kind of goes in, like front crawls his way into shots, to be honest with you. He's like DDP with no plot armor on the feet. You know what I mean? No raw physicality and worse. Let's just say it, worse than DDP on the feet. He doesn't have as much dynamic techniques, doesn't have as much of an arsenal. Brady's good. I think he's very good. And I think he will be a mainstay of the top 15 of the welterweight division moving forward. And I think he's going to be a problem for a lot of people. I ain't picking him to beat Leon Edwards. Giving Edwards 2 inches of reach over him. Uses the cage well. May back up a bit, but Brady is hesitant. This is a big moment for him. We saw him shit the bed in Abu Dhabi against Belal. Main event, short notice for Brady. I know he's got good conditioning, but does he have good conditioning when he fails the takedowns? Against Chiesa, we were proving that he didn't. I know he broke his nose in that fight, but you're telling me Edwards can't break that nose if Chiesa can? Michael Chiesa? Stuffing takedowns against him, teeing off on him on the feet, breaking his nose? Oh, I gasped because Chiesa broke my nose. You're fighting Leon Edwards. And I don't know if it's the same Gilbert Burns at this point. He looked so bad in that fight. He looked hesitant. He doesn't have the grit, I don't think, anymore, that he did against Chimaev, where he's grinning against Khamzat Chimaev with blood leaking down his face. I didn't see that. I know Edwards isn't that guy typically, but he's also not that guy because we don't often see him in those positions where he's got to be that guy because he's that good. I reckon we're going to see a real shitty Leon Edwards decision win. All of that hype just to end it with that. I think we're going to get a classic, shitty, dull, boring 3-2, 4-1 win from Leon Edwards where he will outdamage Sean Brady. Reverse positions on takedown attempts. Maybe Brady gets him down in moments and Edwards ends up throwing up a sub and then sort of kicking him off from bottom position, getting back up to his feet and like working his own takedown maybe that Brady will get out of and they'll scramble. So I think there'll be moments where Brady gets a takedown, but it will be like worthless for him. Edwards will either stuff it or get back up or waste his time against the cage, reversing, and then get back to just being better on the feet. And I think if Brady fails those takedowns, which he succeeded with against Burns, he got 7 of 17. I don't see him getting 7 on Leon Edwards. I can see 2, 3. So he's gonna have to push. He did very well though, man. 130 strikes landed on Gilbert Burns is very impressive. 274 total strikes. He really did do a number, but I just don't think in Edwards you ain't gonna just massively out-volume him. I know that Belal just did, but let me tell you the numbers about the Belal Muhammad fight. 68 significant strikes to Belal to 47 from Leon Edwards. Even the pressure fighters And Bilal kept busy with little punches whenever he had dominant position, like the back. He would tap in with shots non-stop. I get it. But even the numbers, 68 to 47 on significant strikes on that fight. Edwards takes high volume fighters and he slows that shit down every single time. And I think the output is Brady's only chance. And Edwards is a fucking underdog. I'm going Leon Edwards. I think he's locked in. I think he needed a humbling against Bilal. He was kind of getting too big for his boots, you know, mocking him in the elevator. It kind of became a little bit of a bully, if we're being honest. But I'm going to go Leon Edwards to win. I'm going to go Leon Edwards to win the fight. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip, I'll see you later. Edwards 3-2 or 4-1. I might as well wait 5 seconds until the fucking hour mark, so it looks more impressive. Well, there you go. See you later, guys. Goodbye.